Why did people start calling you Wonder Woman?
Hmm, great question. Um, well, when I was married, but to be honest, for most of my life, I'd say I was heavily in my masculine energy. So that's the energy where you're always doing, it's the energy of control. You're kind of in protection mode as well. Um, but yeah, like just organizing everything, almost like just never having space. Um, Wearing the busy badge as if like it's some kind of mark of success. And yeah, I mean, to really push myself in those days. And I pushed myself physically, like with fitness. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on there. And I say that was my conditioning. The more I invested in myself, the more I started working with coaches and, really consciously looking at my patterns, I started to really see this. And unless you bring that into the light, you're not aware of it because it's just part of you. Yeah, I was constantly called Wonder Woman. If there was a job to do, it would be like, well, Claire's like one of those people who's so capable, like she'll just say yes to it. And yes, it used to say yes to everything. Used to say yes to everything and would never sit down. I mean, I never really put on weight, but I was skinny then, like skinny, because I also had three children who were born within 4 years. Yeah, like I think that was another example of just like, I can do this, I can do it all, like do it all. And the thing is, when you're in that kind of energy, you don't allow yourself to feel. Yeah, marathon mum as well. I used to get called. I'd run marathons, and it was yeah, it was all to do with the energy that I was in. And it's just unhealthy to be too heavily in one energy. And that was what I became present to. And until you get present to it, you can't change.
You said that was part of your upbringing to be that kind of power horse, if you will. And there's kind of different ways how people can develop ever since their childhood. There's the upbringing, but then there is an innate high achiever type of person. I personally did not find out until today whether it is an innate a DNA thing, maybe it plays a role as well, or whether it is really the conditioning, the how you have been raised. Would you really say it is your upbringing, or do you feel like you're innately such a driven person, such a high achiever, high performer?
I'd say for me, it was very much led by my conditioning, for
Hmm.
sure. This isn't like anyone's fault, right? Because this is an ingrained generational pattern. The learned behavior, not just from, my conditioning, my kind of childhood, but also through generations before. And society teaches us to be in control. It rewards control. Like society really kind of dictates and brainwashes us to be in the masculine conditioned energy. Like, so it's not just, it's just like been such a big part of ancestral kind of history.
It is really the perspective of having power, is my impression of many Western societies. You could say it is almost an obsession to have power over something, and men tend to, which is why we have the patriarchy, right? Where men tend to have or tend to desire to take over, to have power over someone or over some things. And it is quite interesting that in other cultures, there is not such a big obsession with power itself, where people tend to culturally be more conditioned to lead, specifically for
Mm.
men, that they see their role more as a leader, and the woman sees her role more as someone who follows because she trusts enough, right? not that kind of, oh, I submit to you because I'm weaker, I'm dumber, and I'm skillless compared to you. But she is equally skilled and she's equally capable. But when it comes to leadership, she just gives the man that space to lead her
Mm.
into a certain direction, right? Just like the kids, right? And she, by that, also kind of shows up as a role model for her kids, that it is okay to follow, that you don't have to have the power all the time. And I see that a lot with couples, with married people in relationships. And I experienced that myself, obviously, as well, when I was in relationships. The tendency living in a Western world where power is so much embraced and rewarded, as you say, you kind of tend to go into a power struggle all the time.
Yep.
And you just said that you have three children. You are also divorced, right? So you had to
Hmm.
be a single mom of three, which I can only applaud you to going through with that kind of courage and strength. You have to, right? I'm a single mom of two myself. So adding one more is very challenging. And how did you actually navigate yourself through balancing your personal life and then also your career aspirations that I'm sure you had?
Yeah, this is a great question. And yeah, I'm someone who likes to feel into things and go with my intuition. So I think that's my answer, really. I think that's actually my answer to this question, interestingly, is like just really leaning on trust within myself. I'm very conscious about where I put my energy, very conscious. And I think when you navigate divorce, this is my experience, and I can only speak from that. I do coach a lot of women through divorce too, and men. But speaking from my own lived experience, it was just literally trusting every step that showed up and being conscious about where I put my energy. I found that actually a lot of people in my life fell away, so I navigated a spiritual awakening, which caused me to actually leave because it actually gave me the courage and the confidence to go. It was almost like my intuition was so on fire. It was like I couldn't, I couldn't sit with it any longer. It was like you have to go. Yeah, it was like just inside me, this fire inside. And the fear was present, but it was not having any impact. And I think when you follow your intuition and really lean on that and hear it and take those aligned steps, they come with this energy of authority. And so something I noticed was people were falling away from me because I'd suddenly evolved at a dramatic rate. And, I'd made a very courageous decision. I think there were a lot of people in my world who it rustled their feathers because if you think of going back to the first thing we talked about the conditioned masculine, we've been conditioned to be in a monogamous relationship. You walk down the aisle till death do us part forever, right? Everyone walks down the aisle, right, thinking it's forever. I would imagine I very much did, right? What I really noticed was I had to really look after one, myself, to be able to be the best mum I could be. Because yeah, things got busy being a mum of three on my own. There wasn't someone else to do all the mum taxiing. All of that was on me. And you know what? I think actually it's probably taught my children a huge amount because I had to say no a lot. I remember there was a situation once where I was with my middle son and my two other children were both stranded somewhere and needed a lift. I couldn't help either of them. It's like, no, you're going to have to find your own way home now. And I live in the country, so buses and public transport is really not readily available. And but you know what? They had to become really resourceful. They had to, make an empowered choice in that moment. And mum was not there to go and pick them up. Mum was not there to save them. It was like they had to save themselves. And I didn't even give them the answer to what they needed to do. It was like, you work it out.
How old were they?
19 and 15. So wasn't so concerned about my 18 or 19-year-old. Like, that's fine, right? But my 15-year-old, she's a girl, and yeah, like you want to make sure, especially if she was on her own, like you want to make sure she gets back all right. But I couldn't do anything. And I think, yeah, it's empowered me to make choices for me. And so, yeah, that has helped me to really align with, one, my big vision, my business, like that really opened up as a result. And the work that I'm doing now, the coaching that I'm doing, is just a different level. But also the kind of themes that I'm coaching in. One is dating. Obviously, I was never dating when I was married. So, that suddenly opens up and people see me as a dating expert now. So yeah, essentially I got really, really conscious about where to put my energy. And I remember for the first 5 months, whilst I was navigating this awakening, I pretty much hibernated. I was just growing at such a rapid speed and so much emotion was coming up. And I was just processing, like literally daily, like hourly. It was intense. And so there wasn't really a lot of space for anything else because I was just doing like processing. I was serving my clients, my business exploded in all of that, navigating massive waves of grief, but attracting like crazy. So yeah, it was a really interesting time. But yeah, the biggest learning from that was like, look after you, number one.
Absolutely. And I hope that we will go more in detail into that realm of self-care and self-love. But you said something quite profound, that you needed to kind of deeply trust yourself and grow and develop that type of intuition. And we oftentimes hear in that self-development space the word intuition a lot. But my impression of how people talk about it is that they don't quite know, first of all, what it is and how to get it. Where does it live, so to speak? And how can a person really tap into their own intuition? And we speak for women most of all, because I feel, first of all, women have a much deeper intuition than men have. So we need to tap into this because I feel this is our superpower. And if we don't access it, we will kind of derail. We will go on the wrong path in life, and we might not know how to get out of it, right? So I feel intuition is just like identity, for example, one of the most important parts of a human being to develop. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, and at school we're not taught to trust ourselves. We're told to recite information and then regurgitate it in an exam. We're not taught to trust ourselves at all. And again, that comes back to the system and intuition. Yeah, the deeply feminine connection and power, and tapping into the feminine energy, which of course, like, doesn't matter what gender you are, we have both genders within us, because to cause results we need to take the action, but to allow our intuition to really speak and for us to hear it, we need space, which is about really in the being energy, which is the feminine. And so yeah, my experience of that, I mean, stepping away from my marriage after such a long time, like, that was trusting myself big time. And I remember a question from my ex-husband when I told him I was leaving him, because that's all I knew was, and it wasn't even planned, that conversation, like, it was not planned. It just fell out of my mouth, of course. No coincidence how that happened. And, it was like my soul was just like took over my voice, is what I feel. And just let those words out that I'm leaving you. And I remember him saying to me, like, have you thought this through in terms of like how we're going to sort everything out? Like the logistics, masculine, right? No, no, I've only seen the first step. That's it. And when you really tap into your intuition and act on it, and that's the thing where I see a lot of people say, yes, I'm tapped into my intuition. But unless you act on it, it's pointless. And it takes courage to act on your intuition, because your intuition most often makes no sense whatsoever. Like my intuition just led me to India a few weeks ago, which I only knew a couple weeks before the actual trip. Logistically, it did not line up at all on so many levels, but I trusted that I needed to go. It has evolved me massively, that trip. And no coincidence, I've magnetized a new client from that trip. Every time I travel, I get a new client. Doesn't make sense for me to go and travel because, like, with 3 children and all the other logistics, doesn't make sense at all. And I think we are so wired by the conditioned masculine to make sense of everything, for everything to be logical. And when you're leading your life truly, authentically by your intuitive path, it never makes sense in my experience. And it will send you doing crazy things that you probably would never have imagined yourself. I mean, if I think about my last 2 years, I mean, I've written a whole book on it, and there's sequels coming. It's been huge. I mean, I probably have I could probably give Harry Potter a run for its money, like with the amount of content I have from just literally running my life on my intuition and the places and adventures it's taken me on. And I suppose the other thing to kind of really speak on here is how to tap into that is having faith, which again is like really embodying the feminine energy. Because so what I was talking about earlier about how I was heavily in my masculine, when you're heavily in your masculine, you're not going to be getting so many intuitive hits because there's no space for it to drop in. And so feminine is doing all the things that you love, lying in the bath, like doing nothing, going on a walk in nature. Singing for me is like a massively huge thing, like to embody my feminine. And most often, I find quite often with clients when they come to me, they can be very heavily in their masculine energy. And I ask them, what do you do for you? Oh, well, I used to do this, but when did you last do that? Years ago. It's like most of a lot of entrepreneurs, like they are putting so much energy and action into their business. Like all the things that actually are for them tend to get dropped off the schedule first. And the way that I coach, like those things are non-negotiable. You fit the work, like the client work, all of that around it. Like going for a massage, going for a walk, whatever those things are that really help you to be and be in your body out of your head are like deeply important. But your intuition will come in different ways in my experience. And some people feel it in tingles in their body. Some will just feel it as a knowing, just an inner knowing. They can't really describe what that is. Some will be like a clear message. Some might be a visual. Like it can be so unique for everyone. And when you can start to really act on those little nuggets, on those hits, that's when your intuition will feed you more. Like more will come. Because the universe rewards the courageous one.
In my experience, it's beautiful how you describe it all. The experience that I have with my intuition is that, and it's great that you say if you don't act on it, it doesn't matter. And I think even more profound it is that if you don't act on your intuition, which is the message or the drive or the answer that you're looking for, that will come first, at least in my experience. You will first get the intuition, kind of the knowing, the feeling, right? What you should be doing or what is right for you and what is not.
Yeah.
And if you don't act on this, your mind will take over. And this happened to me so many times. And every time I ignored my intuition, I found myself in hell, to say it dramatically, right? Because the mind, compared to the intuition, is really an infant. The mind is only a tool that even during the pregnancy develops last, when the baby develops in the womb. First, the heart really develops, and the heart and the intuition always are deeply connected with each other, right? The solar plexus and the heart. Like, this is the area that develops first in the baby. So imagine all the time, all the 9 months almost, that this is the first organ that has the wisdom, the knowledge, and the experience being a human being is first. And then last, the brain really develops, and it doesn't stop developing until we are 20 or 30 in that kind of gap, right? So the brain is kind of like a really interesting tool, and it will not always lead you in the right way. Especially if you don't know how to use it. And my impression is that, and I myself had a long time of learning how to actually use that thing, to my advantage. And you also mentioned the conditioning of the system, because especially in the Western world, that's my profound impression, is that you are so conditioned to live above your head. Like, you are so pushed into your head, even the music, right? I'm big into music and studied musicology and all that stuff, and I'm a musician myself. So I noticed that very profoundly, that this is pushed into the head. Even the frequencies to which we tune our instruments are pushing us into the head, either the head or the hips, right? The deep beats and all the deeper music that activates our root chakra, right? And the heart stays blank. There's nothing, that happens nothing when we're listening to Western music, popular music that has been tuned to certain frequencies, right? So when you think about that kind of system and concept that we are living in on a daily basis, right? Even the food that we consume also have certain frequencies and vibration that does certain things to our bodies that keeps us above the head. So the heart basically almost never is alive, and the intuition, the struggle to access your intuition is really real. And the more we also sit, right, and we don't move our bodies, and you mentioned that singing, dancing, whatever you want to do with your body is like keeping the body in the flow, which kind of helps you really tap into that intuition.
The body always holds the wisdom, and we're taught to live in our head, and that's not where we get the answers. It's not where we get the answers for our lives. And that's where you're going to try and make sense of everything all the time. And it's the cause of why people end up manifesting physical symptoms and pain, because they're not tuned into their body. And the thing is, the body, when it's in pain, it's going to start communicating to you. And I believe that every single physical manifestation has an emotional cause. I'm very much into Louise Hay, Heal Your Life. And I think when you are living a very conscious life and you are dealing with your emotions as they come up and processing them, then they're not getting stuck in the body, because that's what happens. And I've had clients who, suddenly had realizations that they have literally cut themselves off from being connected to their body. Like it's been like a massive light bulb moment through coaching with me. Like, oh my God, I realized I abandoned my body because of a specific situation that has happened. And it's so powerful to witness suddenly them reconnecting with that. And it's like the most incredible experience ever. Mm.
You mentioned your book just recently. Let's talk about that. Why did you start writing that book?
I just started writing about that journey and expressing and talking about how every single guy that I met taught me something about myself, helped me to heal deep, deeper layers of my abandonment wound and really shift from a place of anxious attachment, which, funnily enough, I was never in my marriage. As soon as I stepped into dating, all of that came up. And I recognized that's because I was secure in my marriage. Like I was the secure one. But stepped out of that. And then suddenly, like all of this was coming up. And of course, that was what I needed to be going through and evolving through. And so, yeah, it dramatically caused me to, really sit in some discomfort, as a result, where I was navigating all the different experiences through dating. And yeah, I just started writing about it because it felt I was just learning so much about myself. It just felt right, is all I can say. It just felt right and it just felt effortless. And yeah, just through that, it really caused me to navigate more of the grief that I was still holding on to. And, grief, there's no destination. Like you're always just healing deeper layers and expressing more. So it's been a really powerful way to express my voice. Yeah, I've loved the journey. The editing part, I'm not enjoying so much. I have to be really in the mood. And I think, one thing I've really learned with the book writing process is you can't force it. You have to do it when you feel you're in the right energy. Because if you think about it, the reader is going to feel that. The reader is going to feel that. So you want to be writing it in the energy that you want the reader to read it. So I tend to use my flights actually for editing. That's quite cool.
And that goes so against the mainstream and the main attitude that we see online and of course offline. This again masculine energy. You have to show up even if you don't feel like it, right? That's some of the phrases that we sometimes catch, right? Or you have to work even if you don't feel like working, right? And
Okay. I think also it's interesting, like people have asked me about my process with writing my book and saying, okay, so like, did you have a structure and did you like think about all the chapters? I went, no, none of that, which would have been a masculine way to write it, like masculine energy. No, I literally just wrote whatever my intuition was guiding me to write. I just let it all pour out. And then when I started editing, I could then clearly see the chapters. It was like, oh, okay, that just feels about right there. And then I could start to title the chapters, which I'm, still working on really. It's just being tweaked. But I've written it in a completely different way to, I think, what a lot of maybe writing coaches may teach you to do. And I know, you can go on writing retreats. And I think, you know, everything has a place, of course. And if that feels good for you, then that's perfect. But for me, yeah, it's just very much being tuned into when does it feel good to write rather than forcing it in any way.
I think there is, just like you said, there's a place for everything. And I feel if a person, let's take a woman, right, for example, she's a lot in her feminine energy and she has difficulty to tap into her masculine. So structuring maybe her business, her life, her parenting style, whatever it is, her relationships. I think in that instance, it is quite helpful for her to balance her feminine energy and to give her more structure. So to have more like a masculine book writing approach, if you will, right? Compared
Yeah.
to a woman, for example, that is heavily in her masculine, right? She would need to balance that with a more intuitive approach, just like you did, right? And
Hmm.
I also feel that both need to have a place. Like, I'm not a big
Yeah.
fan of this fight between masculine and feminine. Like, there is a reason why we have been born into a world of duality, right? And we cannot escape this. All we can do is learn how to actually balance it. And the moment we actually learn this type of balance and how it feels for us, and how much effort and what different steps we need to take to actually balance that thing, and that will look quite individual for each person. That's where the bliss comes, I feel. That's where you tap
Mm.
into that so-called happiness and joy and all the things that people strive for, and this kind of content and fulfillment and excitement about being alive.
100%. I love how you put that actually. And I agree. I think ultimately it's about making an empowered choice for you. Yeah, if like a book writing structured course is the way you're going to get into that, perfect. And you're right. And, we're all such unique beings and we've all had different conditioning. And yeah, like some people will be naturally more in their feminine. So getting things done will be more challenging. But as you say, I think it's about getting that kind of balance. And I think there's never fully balanced because sometimes you might have days where you're out of balance, you're more in action, you're more in feminine, whatever. I definitely have learned how to do that for sure. Like, yeah.
What would you say is one thing that you learned most from writing the book?
I think it's a really great way because I've written it about my journey in the last 2 years, it's really like as I've been going through again editing, it's like I've forgotten what I wrote right at the beginning. So I'm going back through editing, and what I'm realizing is like, wow, like that feels like a lifetime ago that happened. And it's only like, 2 years ago or a year ago. And I'm reading it and I'm like, my gosh, like recognizing where I am now compared to where I was. And I think that's like the biggest, almost like a moment to just go, yeah, I did that. I did that. I created that. And like celebrate yourself. Because I think, we're so often striving towards our vision and achieving what it is we see ourselves doing in the future that we don't always take a moment to pause and reflect back and go, oh my gosh, I remember that day like so clearly. I remember how I felt. And gosh, how I'm navigating things now is very different. And you get to see how you've evolved. And I think about like the early stages of when I was navigating, being on my own, navigating the grief, and it would wipe me out for, a few days. And how I see myself navigating and processing that emotion now is so much faster because I've got that muscle memory and I've done so much processing already. Like you get much more resilient and not to move through it quickly because that is not the thing. But I just recognize how I can move myself through it in a yeah, just a more effortless way and also not be so scared by it. I was terrified by some of the darkness that came. And I think now I see it for what it is. It doesn't mean I'm okay with it when it's happening, But I remind myself there, this means you're growing. Like, this is really uncomfortable, but you know what's on the other side of here. So almost try and get myself into an energy of excitement. I'm not feeling that at the time at all, but it's like, I'm like, okay, this is really hurting, but knowing that this is part of the growth. And I think in those earlier days of navigating my awakening, it was so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. And I've been doing personal development for years, but this was different. Like, this was a whole different level. It's really hard to describe to people what that was like. And I think everyone's going to have a different experience when they navigate an awakening. I've spoken to people, and yeah, of course, it's going to be unique to you.
Yeah, people oftentimes imagine things to be punctual or like a point or like a destination, right? Just like you described. But really, life is like a river, and you will always be growing. And unless you kind of, just like you said, take time to reflect and see how far you've come. Maybe 2 years ago you have been praying for the place and feeling that you're in right now. So acknowledging this type of achievement and growth is where actually that kind of happy feeling comes from, right? And people hunting happiness like it's a hunting game is really funny to me, because happiness is an emotion that you can only feel
Mm-hmm.
in the moment where you stand still and actually observe yourself, actually tap again into your body. The moment you are hunting anything, you are striving for something, again, masculine energy, you will have a hard time feeling yourself because you are in the movement, on the go, so to speak. Your mind is kind of directing you somewhere, but the deepest feelings of content and happiness and fulfillment, at least in my human experience, is when I'm still or when I'm doing something creative, because it is involved with myself, with my heart, with my intuition,
Mm.
with my creativity. Yes, of course, but I'm kind of still in my physical body, but my emotional body is like traveling a lot during that kind
Mm.
of creative process. And I think this is why it is so important for people, especially for people who have running businesses, right? Who are so busy all the time, right? Who are running
Mm-hmm.
wild in their minds, to have a daily routine of self-care. Not Sunday is your self-care day. Like it has to be every day that you actually tap back into yourself and you slow down time, right? You kind of
Mm.
eliminate that hunting spirit in that moment and allow yourself to just be, and without guilt or shame. And I think for women it is
Mm.
particularly difficult to not do anything, right? And we can see women, especially nowadays, with everything that is expected from them, right? They are driven to do so much that they have really no time for themselves, especially when they have kids. And this goes back to what you were saying in the beginning, having 3 kids, being alone, doing it all by yourself. Um, how do you help clients get around that without feeling guilty?
Well, feeling guilty is it's just a judgment on yourself. And a lot of the coaching that I do is really coaching women, and I coach men, but mostly women, around self-acceptance. Um, and that all starts with what you're saying to yourself. What are the narratives that are playing out? What is taking the airtime? And yeah, so feeling guilty is like just noticing, oh, I'm feeling really guilty about taking this time out. And I've had moments like that in the last 2 years when I've been traveling around the world, leaving my kids. Like, I left them for a whole month. I went to Bali earlier in this year because my soul was calling for me to go there. And yeah, the guilt popped up, but I noticed it. And here's the thing that I personally do, and this is how I coach my clients too, is remind myself, what am I modeling? And is this in line with my vision and my legacy? So I'm all about helping people feel free. That's my legacy here for sure. And so traveling the world, go and leaving your kids for a month. That is that. It's, freedom is a feeling state, right? But allowing yourself to let go of you know, the societal norms of a mum stays at home and is the main carer. And so, while your children are school age, you stay at home and you look after them. Yes, absolutely. I do that. But also, I'm a mum who likes to go and explore and be free and be on her own. And what what am I showing my sons and my daughter? Like, you do whatever feels good for you. Like, you can make those choices if that is what feels right. That's true empowerment. And um, yeah, you can feel guilty about that, but then you take yourself away from the moment. You don't get to enjoy it. And even on that whole month away, like, I didn't have loads of contact with my kids, to be honest. My kids are teenagers, so they're not really up for chatting on the phone for ages. I might get a text message going, "Can you send me some money?" That would be the communication. And I just, the thing that I've also learned is you can feel into people energetically wherever you are in the world. It doesn't matter. So I was always there for my kids. Like, they knew I was there. And actually there was some emotional stuff that came up for one of my children while I was away. And of course, like, straight away, jump on a call, jump on WhatsApp and we're on a call, and I could still support. Um and I think as a mum, like, you are still available despite wherever you might be. And that's something I say to my kids. It doesn't matter where I am in the world, I'm still your mum. I'm still emotionally there for you.
You said something interesting. When
Mhm.
you don't listen to your intuition and what it tells you in the moment, it will be gone, right? And I also made that observation with myself and also with other people. When you stop
Yeah.
listening to your intuition, it will stop talking to you. And your mind
Hmm.
again will take over and tell you, see, I told you so, you need to listen to me, right? And so the mind will take over again and guide you in his infancy and into his best ability through life, right? But it
Will
will
keep you
not,
safe.
yeah, yeah, it will. And I feel like the mind and the brain is all only a tool to solve problems. It is not there to give you wisdom about yourself,
No. Hmm.
about people, about situations, about spaces and feelings and all that stuff. Biologically, of course, it does, but I feel neglecting the independence or the independent brain that we have in our stomach, for example, or in the heart, or in our the vertebrae. Is it that word?
Oh yeah, the vertebrae. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that they are quite independent pieces of the body that do operate almost on their own, which is deeply connected to the intuition. So I think it is quite profound if you stop listening to your intuition, because it will then stop talking to you. And this is dangerous. This is quite literally dangerous because this is the only system, if you will, that will be able to guide you in the most safe way.
But it doesn't feel safe. And
Yeah.
that's why people will follow the mind, which is, like you said, the the second thought that drops in, like the ego, the current sense of self, will drop in whenever you're about to do something, like new and unknown, leave your husband or whatever that step might be, the ego will drop in and try to sabotage. So, yeah. And then all the stories come up. We are brilliant at making stories, stories in the mind.
And
And
falling into perfection also. Whenever we let the mind lead, and I'm a victim of it as well, being a perfectionist for almost all my life. And I didn't even notice that I was doing that, right? Just a couple of years ago, that was brought to my attention that I might have this type of tendency, right? And that it was actually holding me back, which was completely true because I couldn't let go unless it was perfect. And I couldn't release or post something unless it was perfect, right? And it is, of course, holding you back, right? And the intuition is completely different. It is not judgmental. Whenever you let your intuition actually drive you, it will not judge you, right? It will just let you do the thing that it recommends you to do, and you actually enjoy it, right? So this is very
yeah.
beautiful.
Whenever I go live, sometimes I don't even have a title. And I'm like, oh, well, apparently I'm going live. Don't know what I'm actually about to say yet. But yeah, it's fun. It's actually really fun. But, it takes time to get to that place, particularly when you've been heavily in your masculine energy. Like, I remember when I used to do lives, oh my God, I have like, post-its with the notes of, because I wasn't in a place of true trust. I was learning how to trust myself, but it was like, shit, what if I forget my words? I forget my words all the time now. I've done that today. Like, I'm like, where was I? Or where, did that answer the question? I don't have a judgment of it anymore. I used to be so scared about that. And yeah, it would just like almost like I get the word rigid about myself, how I used to be. And I think that's harsher than what I was, to be fair. But it's almost like, I was trying to hold everything together, everything together. It was almost like came across as like a rigidity. And I think when you're holding yourself in that way and, very much in that masculine energy, yeah, your body is a bit stiff. I recognized I was holding a lot of tension, mostly in my womb, right? Because I didn't own my sexuality. And when a woman isn't owning her sexuality, she's not owning her voice. They're deeply interconnected. And yeah, it was almost like, just uptight is all I can describe. It's fascinating when you unpick it.
And if you had, like, you have such a brave journey now that you even wrote a book about, at least about the 2 years that were profoundly guided by your intuition. But if you wanted to develop yourself further, or if you had like 3 wishes that you would speak to the universe, what would you wish for and why?
Ha! 3 wishes. Oh, what would I wish for? Um, to to continue to develop a really open, transparent, deeply connected and intimate relationship with my children. I'd say number one. You know, I think they've had to really catch up on this journey with me, really catch up, because they saw me as the conditioned mum for so long. And suddenly I'm now bringing conversations to the table that they never had before. So that would be the first wish, is to really deepen that connection and relationship with them. Um, I always speak to the universe about opening me up more to be like this even clearer channel to tap into that universal energy. And yeah, there's nothing more delicious than that feeling where you tap into that energy. So always more of that, like more evolving, open me up so that I can really just access that, because I know the more I access that, the more I am living my truth, and causing an even bigger impact. And my third wish is like, get me on that stage like now. Now, whether that's the TV show, the big stage, I don't mind. I'm on radio now weekly. I'm like, on the next, please, because I see this. I've been seeing the stage for years. I am a performer for sure, and it's even in my past life, like no coincidence. Um, so I'm like, yeah, bring that now, please. I'm ready.
That's so awesome. And it will. It will. Like when you're
It
ready, you're
absolutely
ready.
will. Yeah, for sure.
Now, where can people find your radio show?
So, weekly on a Friday, I am the dating coach on Dublin City FM. Always in their morning segment between 10 and 12, normally around about 11, but depends what's happening in Dublin, really. So I'm always there. And other places that people can find me and connect with me are Facebook, Claire Dore, and Instagram, and TikTok is the Wild Woman CEO. I also have a website, um, which is clairedore.com.
And of course, I will leave all the links in the description and show notes for everyone interested. I will listen into your radio show as well. I'm curious. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this beautiful conversation.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it so much.